Vanakkam and good afternoon everyone on this rainy Thursday evening. Today's video we are going to look at three major sections of Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma. Three major sections that has more or less come into conflict with each other, where one more or less tries to debunk the other of their rituals and their rites and how they do their worship. One trying to be more predominant, the other stating that what they do is taboo and all these different things. Today we're going to look into three major sections, which are Shiva, Vaishnava, and Shakta, to see where they more or less fall in alignment to each other, where certain doctrines they will acknowledge together, but where they will also be divided from each other, to where different doctrines, to how they govern themselves, how they perform their rites and their rituals, the different books and so forth. We will look into all those things. As we have seen for how many years now, and now in this time and age on social media and different platforms, we see every day that when certain sections, like say Shakta, for instance, put up their rites and worship of Kali Mata, Kal Bhairava, they even put up different aspects of worship and how they do. Let's example most common, the Balidan. We have people of Vaishnava and so forth go out of their way to explain that is not the way, that is not how you're supposed to do things. These things are taboo, they are not, they are not founded, they do not have any background and so forth, and no foundation. And they are quoting scripture from the Ramayana, they are quoting scriptures from the Gita and so forth. Now, while I do applaud, individuals standing up for Dharma and standing up for rights and rituals and so forth, it is very poor when you are using doctrines that is not of that sect or from that section of worship that more or less will acknowledge those doctrines that you do quote from, but they do not govern that section of worship. Right? So today we are going to look at these three sections I have mentioned: Shiva, Vaishnava, Shakta, and we are going to look at the doctrines that will govern them. We are going to look at the doctrines that they would more or less intertwine the others or connect the others, because they're connected to the others, but do not govern, do not more or less control how they do their worship. Also, we are going to look at who are the godheads or the primary deity that they will worship, to get a better understanding why we will have different conflicts and so forth. Right? So let's firstly look at Vaishnava. Vaishnava worship is more or less well known for their rituals and rites of sattvic nature, pure in this aspect, where they use strictly fruits, sweets, and so forth, flowers, and all the different things perfectly. Right? Their primary godhead or their main aspect of worship will be towards Lord Hari or Lord Vishnu in this aspect, and his avatars. Mainly, you would be that avatar of Ram, that avatar of Krishna, and that avatar of Narasimha, that half lion, half man avatar. Right? There are different sections, there are different books or different doctrines that will more or less contribute and govern the way they do their worship. Now, some of these books are of Mahapurans, which is more commonly known doctrines. Some are of Upapurans or lesser known doctrines. And then some of more or less Agamas, or what is more or less so commonly known as Tantras. Yes, Vaishnava does have some concept of Tantras, not tantric worship, but Tantras, which is doctrines that goes in details of rituals and rites and so forth. And there are certain agamas that Vaishnava, more or less five aspects, but more or less one in particular that they will give more or less, they will recognize than the other four. And I will give mention of that. So we have where Vaishnava is concerned. So the doctrines that Vaishnava right, will more or less use as their foundation, the infrastructure of how they govern themselves, how they do their rites and rituals and so forth. With me of the Vishnu Puran, the Bhagavad Gita, which is actually the Gita itself here, not confusing with the Srimad Gita, right, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, which is more or less for the glories of Ma and Shakta worship. We have the Skanda Puran, we have the Vara Puran, the Narad Puran, we have the Gurut Puran, we have the Vayu Puran, right? We have the Matsya Puran, we have the Bhavesha, right? The Bhavesha Puran, we have the Vamana Puran, we have the Kumar Puran, we have the Markandeya Puran and the Brahmana Puran. Right, the Brahmana Puran, we have those. Now, I did mention Agama, right, which is something we call a Tantra also. So there's one called the Pancharatra, the Pancharatra Agama. This will deal with rituals with one. Mind you, the Agamas are not full tantric texts that goes beyond into Rajasic and Tamasic. They are in line with Vedic literature, right? They are aligned with Vedic literature. So the rituals that is in the Pancharatra is aligned with Vaishnava worship in Sattvic nature. Right? You can find it on the internet. There are many um, PDF copies that you can get of it, where it goes into details and it shows you all the different rites and rituals and so forth. Also, the Agni Puran is also one that is aligned with Vaishnava. Now, one or two of these Purans that I have mentioned here under Vaishnava, both Shakta and Shiva will acknowledge. They will acknowledge, the Narad Puran, they will actually, the Agni Puran, right? They will acknowledge, the Markandeya Puran and so forth, right? So, also Vaishnava will acknowledge different Purans that is within the other sectors. So, let us look at, they will acknowledge the Linga Puran and they will acknowledge the Shiva Puran. Now, what is also, they will acknowledge it and they will actually acknowledge the glorifications, because in Vaishnava they will acknowledge different glories of the different gods and goddesses or deities. But the primary would be the glorifications and so forth of Lord Vishnu, right? Of Lord Vishnu in his avatars. Yes, they would acknowledge because they do share common festivals. So we're looking at Shivatri, we're looking at Naratam, we're looking at Deepavali and so forth. We're looking at all this, Hanuman Jayanti and so forth. They will acknowledge different holy festivals within the Hindu calendar. Right? And the doctrines that is acquainted with these festivals, they will acknowledge them from the different Purans. But primary worship is to Lord Vishnu and his avatars in them. Let us go to Shiva. Shiva is where the primary worship is to Lord Shiva. Shiva is also many may consider to be those of Agoric or Gauris, these different Nagasadhus and them and so forth, that lives up in the mountains and so forth. And their doctrines are more or less Rajasic, and their aspects of worship is, it does have some sort of Sattvic, but more they are of Rajasic and Tamasic nature. And for, where those who do Sattvic worship, like Vaishnava, they were considered to be very much taboo in nature because of they performing Balidan and the way they will go in crematoriums or cemeteries to do different methods of worship and rituals and so forth. Right now, as I said, they are doctrines that Shivites are governed by. So we are looking at, we are looking at the Shiva Puran, we are looking at the Linga Puran, which goes in great details of Lord Shiva and his glories. Now, yes, Shivites will acknowledge different deities. Yes, they will acknowledge Lord Hanuman, they will acknowledge Ram, Sita and so forth. They will acknowledge these different deities of, other aspects of gods and goddesses. They will acknowledge them. And they will pay respects to them on the particular days of holy festivals. But again, their rites and rituals would be founded within the Shiv Puran, within the Linga Puran, and different agamas. One of the most, out of the 28 Shivat agamas, the Kamika agama or Kamika Tantra, that is the most prominent one or most common known to them, that they will acknowledge with rites and rituals and so forth and such. Right? So you have that. But as again I said, they will acknowledge the Vishnu Puran, they will acknowledge the Skanda Puran, they will acknowledge the Gita and so forth. They will acknowledge them. And within the different deities and whatever that are entailed in these. Right? And they will show reverence and respect to the different festivals. But again, their rites, their rituals, their foundations and their Godhead is Mahadev, and so they will follow the doctrines that is pertaining to Mahadev, to how the Shiv Puran would have been, the Linga Puran, and the different agamas that they will consider to be doctrines. Right? Let us look into Shakta, or what we call Shakti, right? Devi worship, right? Devi worship, where the Godhead or Molas or the prime deity is Maha self in that form of Arampara Shakti. Right? Some may say Kali Mata, some might look at her as in the form of Durga Mata. We have the Das Mahavidas in these aspects, different avatars are Maha. So they are doctrines. So we have the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, which most people will call Devi Bhagavata. So you have to understand, it's not the Gita we're talking about here, we're talking about the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam. Puran, right? That is a lesser Puran, that is not a Mahapuran. We have the Kalika Puran in these aspects also, where it goes into glorifications of Ma and goes into deals of worship of Ma from the Sattvic nature straight into the Balidan and offering the Balidan and the different types of Balidan, meaning the different types of animals. So we have that. We have the Brahmana Puran, we have the Skanda Puran, we have the Brahma Vaivrata Puran. Also, that gives glorifications of Ma and her worship also. Yes, Ma, that is in Devi worship. Yes, they will acknowledge different doctrines and different deities. Yes, they will acknowledge the aspect of Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva is the consort of Ma. So they will acknowledge him and his avatar. So in the avatar of Hanuman, Kalbaidava, Bhadra, and so forth. They will acknowledge them and the worship and the holy festivals aligned with them. So Hanuman Jayanti and so forth and such. Yes, they will acknowledge the aspects of Lord Vishnu. So in that aspect of Ram for Ram Navami, the story of Ram and Sita around the part of the Pavli with Lakshmi Puja for the Pavli, they will acknowledge that. They will acknowledge Krishna, as in Krishna Ashtami and so forth. So they are different aspects. So they will acknowledge different deities also, right? That are more or less primarily acknowledged or meaning acknowledged in different sector of Hinduism. They will acknowledge them, but yet the doctrines that give glorification to these deities will not solely govern how Shakta governs themselves or how they do the worship. They have their own doctrines. They also have agamas. So we have Maharinirvana, one of the most common known tantra. So you have that aspect. You have the Kulanava tantra also. You have those. You have the Toladara. You have also you have the Uni Tantra. So there are different tantras that will govern Shakti or Devi worship, right? And this will govern how they perform their worship to Ma. As I said again, they will acknowledge other deities and other gods and goddesses of different aspects of Hinduism, but the doctrines that gives glorifications and rules and regulations on how to perform these towards these gods and goddesses will not govern solely how Shakta does the thing. So this is where we have a lot of misconception, we have a lot of mishaps happening, where Shivat may promote their worship and what they do and how they do. If they do a Balidan, they're doing some sort of worship in the cemetery or something like that. And we have, or even Shakta, right? Shakta doing their worship of Tali worship, the Das Mahavidas, or something like that. And they are offering Rajasic or Tamasic items on the altar, right? This is what, and you will have those of, let's say, Vaishnava. And Vaishnava will break down itself into different aspects, because why? Within Vaishnava worship, you have those of the Hare Krishna aspects and so forth. And they perform strict sattvic, only fruits, sweets, and so forth, nothing rajasic and tamasic in nature. And they will use doctrines, and this is what a lot of Hindus today do not know who they are and what they are. Meaning, and I'm not being disrespectful here, is that they are Vaishnava worshippers that do not know all the doctrines that they are governed by. They do not know solely who are their primary deities and so forth, and and what they will acknowledge from what they do fully acknowledge, and they pick up one thing and run with it, right? Likewise, there are people within Shakta worship that do not fully know what they're about, what doctrines that govern them from what don't. Because you would mention different tantras and they don't know. There are 72 tantras or 72 agamas within Shakti worship or Shakta worship. And you mention one or two of them, the Toladara, the Mahadnadvana, and they have never heard of it. They don't know these books. You mention one that is supposed to be very common, which is the Kalika Puran, that goes into details of worship of man. We look at the different chapters from chapter 53 onwards to 57, that goes into the worship of the Devi. They don't, right? They don't know that. Yes, they will acknowledge, okay, they know of the Devi Mahatam, right? They will know of the Devi Bhagavatam, and the Devi Bhagavatam gives much glorifications of man, that aspect, and many different stories where she intervened in different problems and situations where she fixed and she gave advice. But when you go more in depth to where more into the worship, the rituals and all the japping and the this and the that and the different vrats and fasting and whatever, they're lost. They don't. And this is where, when one aspect of Shakti worship tries to educate the other, they're trying to debunk it by saying it is taboo and whatever, and they do not necessarily have doctrines to facilitate why it's taboo. Likewise, we have those of Vaishnava also, no disrespect again to them, stating that what Shakti may do or how Shakta might do is taboo and rest, because why? It is not common knowledge to them. And this is where we have the problem, where priests, pundits, pujaris, head gurus or whatever are not educating those who are within the different sectors or different sections of Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, educating the masses. These are the doctrines that we are governed by. These are the doctrines that we prescribe to. This is where our foundation are. Yes, we will acknowledge, different deities, different gods and goddesses from different sections, but the books and the doctrines and so forth and the philosophies that gives rite of passage for worship in the aspect that the different section does, we will not prescribe that. We will prescribe to the sattvic nature of doing it. Likewise, this Shivat will have to do the same thing. Shakta should be able to do the same thing, but they're not. Everybody is teaching and wanting to teach the worship. Yes, not a problem. Wanting to share the worship, but how much can you share from personal knowledge? Right? From personal knowledge, of course, you have been years into the worship. You grew up in the worship. Yes, and I'm not debunking and or more or less bashing your personal experiences and the knowledge you grew up with under a guru, under your family lineage, your father, your mother, and so forth. But this is where you have to show where what you do, there is a foundation to it. There is a back reference to it. There are doctrines supporting what you do. Yes, different families, different gurus, there is amendments to what they do out of the beginning of how they were taught, and we go straight back to the aspect of, Shakti worship or Devi worship was not solely just within South India or within that Madrasi or Tamil aspect of worship, that aspect of that part of India, they were Shakti worship and so forth. That is founded also in North India and other parts of India also. So based on the different cardinal points that Devi worship would have come towards the Caribbean, they came with their one or two amended customs and traditions, which makes them a little different to what. So if somebody who is from strict from Tamil Nadu or South India, their tradition would be a little different from somebody who would have performed and followed it in North India. But the foundation would be there. The items that are prescribed to use, whatever, would be there. And we are talking both Sattvic aspect and Balidan aspect. But as I said again, there are doctrines today that gives full discourse of who, why, and what. And this is where we have to educate the masses of what are the doctrines that governs what we do, what are the doctrines that govern what someone else does. So we do not make a mockery, we do not become judgmental or prejudicial to what someone does. If we do not understand it fully, yes, we should look it up and try to understand or even ask questions. Not because I prescribe to something else and what you do is opposite to me makes it wrong to what you are doing, makes it wrong what you are doing, because I prescribe to something that's supposed to be of light or pure of nature, not because you do something radical something makes it wrong. I need to understand what are my boundaries compared to what are your boundaries, right? What connects us together and what will separate. So I understand why you do what you do in the time frame, the manner, and so forth for what you do. And this is what we are not having. You look on all the different platforms in social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you have heavy debates, and you have people blatantly coming out and telling people that it's a farce, it's taboo, it's a lie, misconception, these things were never written. And when you find out what aspect of worship are you from, what sector are you from, what do you prescribe to, and you get to realize where they're coming from, is that you're of this aspect of worship, you're not of my aspect of worship. So your doctrines are whatever, though I may acknowledge it and give it respect, it doesn't govern what I do. These are the doctrines that governs me, while there are certain ones that you may give respect to and acknowledge them because of certain aspects. They do not govern what you do. And this is where, that a lot of dark spots, I wouldn't say muddy, but a lot of dark blackout spots are, because we do not have the different pundits, pujaris, gurus, and whatever, those who are an authority figure, who are leading the flock or trying to teach the flock, give foundation, or more or less goes back to the more or less goes back right down to the root. Okay, we are Shakta. These are the doctrines that we are governed by. This would more or less promote the rituals, and now to the rituals and the rites that we perform. All right. Somebody of Vaishnava will prescribe to this and that, and this is their primary deity, and this and these are the things that are not being explained to individuals. And this is where we have a lot of friction among devotees of God, among Hindus within Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, because one is not understanding where they are, and they're taking what they know as their worship and trying to debunk someone else, not understand that the other person is not necessarily wrong in what they do, be it is not what you do, is that they are governed by different doctrines. And this is what is not being explained to the devotee or to the Hindu. And this is where we need to have these discussions and these videos like these, explaining what is a Vaishnava, what is a Shiva, what is Shakta, who are the primary deities or head gods that they worship and acknowledge, what are the doctrines that they will follow, where does these doctrines come from, and so forth. What doctrines that each section will connect each other as one, not necessarily connect, but what they will acknowledge together, but yet also there are different doctrines that will separate them when it comes to the writing rituals. These are the things that where we have the misconception, this is where we have the problems, and they're not explaining these things, and we need to have these type of discussions, because if you do not have the discussions, you will always have disagreements, you will always have arguments, and you will always have people trying to make a spectacle, more or less making a spectacle of themselves, and trying to debunk something that they truly and honestly do not understand. And it's not because they are arrogant. It's not because they are arrogant and so forth. It is because they are not educated. And I'm not just saying it for Vaishnava aspect. There are people within Shakti worship also that are not educated within the rites and the rituals and the doctrines and so forth. They self do not know what, how, and who, and why, and whatever, and they are doing stuff, and they are trying to debunk other people, but they do not have their references, they don't have their books, they don't have the knowledge that they should know to know how to go about, how to educate, how to debunk something that is more about the worship or outside the worship. So when they are asked questions, they don't know how to answer, and that in itself shows poorly and reflects poorly upon the religion, to know that you are somebody that is of the faith, but yet do not understand your faith and how much years you have been in the faith. Do you have experience or do you have exposure? And this is where we are finding out very dishearteningly. There's a lot of people within the worship, both Balidan and in in Sada or Sattvic aspect, in Shakti worship, and in others, in Vaishnava too. There are many people who are years into their different aspects of worship, and they only have exposure, and they do not have the experience nor knowledge. No one sits and would like to go through a big ass book to read and to learn and understand why, how, when, and so forth, and where, okay, this is what I do, and this is what I prescribe, this is where I work. So, oh, this is what a Shakta does, and this is what they prescribe, and this is the doctrine. So, oh, so this is what separates me from them and they from us in what they do. No one is understanding that. No one is teaching that so people understand the different aspects. And this is why you always have ongoing conflicts among Shivaits, Shaktas, and Vaishnavas, trying to debunk one another, one trying to prove, one trying to debunk, and all these misconceptions. Because why? People who are supposed to be teaching these things are not teaching and educating the right and the proper thing and the most fundamental and basic things about the different sections of worship. So I hope this video has been somewhat informative. It has more or less cleared certain things where doctrines are concerned, godheads are concerned, what they will acknowledge together as one, but what will separate them also individually, where their worship and rites are concerned, and so forth. Right? If there anyone that has more questions, please free to ask them when I post this video via YouTube and I share it via on Facebook. I will be breaking this video down into 3-minute pieces on TikTok. So those 3-minute videos will be coming out today Thursday. Alright, they will be coming out today later in the afternoon. So once again, thank you so very much for your time and your listening. Alright, and as again, anyone should have questions, please feel free to ask. If there's anyone that feels that I did a mess of a job and that I was speaking misconceptions and misinterpretations, feel free to comment on it, and please show me where did I go wrong, but also have your references and your doctrines to back up why and where did I go wrong. So as I said, Jai Sitaram, Vanakkam, thank you everyone.